Benedetto,
Present.
Joseph Chow. I see you there. Wait, let me record. Your recording was Wing Yu.
Present.
Okay. Sung Young Lee,
Present.
Eden Rubenstein,
Present.
Michelle Frederick, not here. Anne Marie Knable, also not here. And Sana Tayeb.
Present.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending our special meeting. Tonight, we're going to talk about the C4E Contracts for Excellent Presentation, which will be presented to you by Superintendent Domingo. Superintendent, are you ready?
I am, and thank you all members of the CEC for allowing this special meeting. As Mr. Di Benedetto said, I am Superintendent Danielle Domingo. And given that this is the last meeting for school year 2022-2023, I want to thank you for allowing me time on your schedule to engage with you on these important items. This evening, I'm joined by our budget matter expert, Dragomira Koliva, who supports our schools with budget and grant-related matters. I'm also joined by Louis Latito, who will be our monitor for any dialogue placed in the chat. In support of the Chancellor's goal of transparency, NYCPS is committed to engaging each district to share highlights of important funding streams and critical work for the school year 2023-2024. This presentation specifically meets the Chancellor's goals by conducting this community engagement. During this session, our goal is to increase transparency by ensuring you, as critical community stakeholders, are made aware of important funding streams, fiscal plans, and other important work for the year ahead. Today, we will share our plan for 4 major topics: federal stimulus, state foundation aid, state contracts for excellence, and our proposed class size reduction plan, a new part of the contracts for excellence process. I will review each topic and provide the process for public comment for each. We also want to make sure you are aware of the possible ways schools can use these resources. Again, thank you for allowing us time on your agenda today. Let's dive into the presentation. Today, we will discuss 4 major topics for the upcoming 2023-2024 school year. I will provide an overview of the funding and share dollar amounts allocated to the New York City Public Schools. I will also discuss how the funding will be allocated to schools and imposed restrictions on how some of the monies and funds are spent. At the end of each topic, I will share how you can provide comments on what I have presented. The 4 major topics we will discuss are: first, federal stimulus; second, state foundation aid; third, state C4E, contracts for excellence; and fourth, class size. We ask that if you have specific feedback, public comment on information shared in this presentation, that you will share that feedback by using the designated email address noted after each section we will cover. I will point out the designated email address at the conclusion of each funding stream section. Remember, there are 4 sections during this presentation. Our New York City Public Schools team will be taking public comment received into consideration in the coming weeks in alignment with the public process. We will begin today's discussion with federal stimulus. In March 2021, the President enacted the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. As a result of the act, New York City received federal stimulus funding to fight the coronavirus pandemic effects on our system. The Department of Education received $8 billion. For the school year 2023-2024, $1.9 billion of federal stimulus funding is remaining. There are a few things that are important to note. $4.8 billion supported activities from the school year 2021-2022 through September 2024. 20% of ARPA funding must be used to address learning loss occurred during the pandemic when schools were not in session. School year 2023-2024, which begins July 1st, is the last year New York City Public Schools will receive federal stimulus funding. In this presentation, I will discuss how the remaining $1.9 billion will be spent. New York City Public Schools will continue its investments in schools budget with our stimulus funding. We will do this by continuing to support major initiatives, including Summer Rising. The New York City Public Schools has committed to $80 million in Summer Rising to provide approximately 110,000 elementary and middle school students with culturally relevant hands-on experiences to strengthen their academic, social, and emotional skills, and will also provide support to high school students through summer programming. We will also continue our investment in school budgets by providing funding to schools still facing enrollment declines. In the 2023-24 school year, as a result of the pandemic, in school year 2023-2024, $160 million is earmarked for schools facing enrollment decline. Enrollment decline has had a significant impact on our schools and its communities, and through the use of this funding, we'll be able to provide some relief for one more year. In addition to continued investments for Summer Rising and enrollment declines mentioned on the previous slide, in the upcoming 2023-2024 school year, nearly $600 million of federal stimulus funding will continue to support significant investments. This slide provides a breakdown of the $600 million investments in three key areas. Over $456 million in early childhood to support the expansion of 3K provided by New York City Public Schools, district schools, and community-based organizations. Over $79 million for mental health support, which includes social workers, guidance counselors, and school psychologists, which continues last year's investment. $50 million to support special education recovery services, which are compensatory services for students with needs that were unavailable during the pandemic. Services are targeted at school-age students with disabilities. Federal stimulus funding continues to support priorities from Chancellor Banks' administration, which includes initiatives such as $6.5 million for contracted school nurses to continue to provide nursing at all New York City public school buildings where New York City public school staff nurses aren't available to provide permanent coverage. $25 million to support arts education. Additionally, $16 million will be funded with one-time Title IV carryover for $41 million program in total. $28 million to expand career pathways programming. Additionally, $24.7 million will be funded with one-time carryover for a $40 million program in total. $15 million for Project Pivot, CBO provided violence interruption activities in high-need schools. $10 million for bilingual education classes and supports. $11 million for family engagement and translation and interpretation services. $7 million to literacy and dyslexia programming, $16 million for digital teaching and learning experiences, and $5 million to high impact tutoring, and $2 million to gifted and talented programming. There is still a strong focus on prioritizing special populations in New York City public schools, for example, students in temporary housing. Additionally, students in bilingual education programs will benefit from this prioritization. We aim to provide this targeted support in various ways. $98 million for special education pre-K, which includes support program stabilization for providers, extending provider hours to align with public school hours and other related supports. $50 million for special education recovery services targeted at school-age students with disabilities, as previously discussed. $55 million investment in community schools, which is targeted at schools with high needs, including large populations of students in temporary housing. And $10 million for expanded bilingual education programs and supports will continue for this upcoming school year. Other key programming funded with federal stimulus dollars includes academic support such as curriculum, building school investments, devices and IT support, and PSAL expansion, to name a few. This slide lists some dollar amounts earmarked to support some of the key programs just mentioned and others listed here on this slide. As a reminder, each topic we will review today has a designated email for public comment. Please share your comments and feedback by using the Stimulus 2022 email address you see on the screen. And monitor, please also drop the email in the chat. The DOE must submit comments to New York State by July 1st, so we ask that you submit your feedback by June 30th. Your feedback is taken into consideration as New York City Public Schools continue to plan for the upcoming school year. As a reminder, principals have received their school year 2023-24 budgets, and school leadership teams are beginning to work with principals on budget priorities as plans for the upcoming school year are finalized. Let's now move to the second funding stream being presented today, state foundation aid. As a reminder, there are three important funding streams being presented today. In the New York State fiscal year 2022 enacted budget, the state committed to fully funding the foundation aid formula, phasing it in over 3 years. For this year's budget, the state made good on its commitment to fully fund the foundation aid formula. This year is the final year for phasing in foundation aid funding. In fiscal year 2024, foundation aid will increase by 5.5%, or $493 million. We are now fully funded through the foundation aid formula, which is allocated by the state. Of the total increase, the first 3%, or $268 million, may be used flexibly. This year, we intend to use the funding to support $120 million will be used to support fair student funding weights that will provide targeted funding to schools with students in temporary housing and with high concentration of students with additional needs. $100 million will be used to support the increase in mandated charter tuition costs, and $48 million will support growth in special education costs and new schools. The foundation aid above 3%, or $225 million, is restricted and must be used for purposes eligible under contracts for excellence, which will be addressed in the next section of this presentation. Again, we want to hear from you. Please share your comments and feedback by using the foundation aid email address you see on the screen. And Louis, can you also drop the email in the chat? We ask that you submit your feedback by June 30th, 2023. We will now move on to the third and last funding stream being presented today, Contracts for Excellence, also commonly referred to as C4E. First, let me begin by providing some background on Contracts for Excellence. C4E legislation was established as part of the 2007-2008 enacted state budget under foundation aid and requires that a portion of foundation aid be used for specific and restricted purposes. C4E requires that funding be allocated towards specific programs that raise the achievement of students with the greatest educational need, including but not limited to those students with limited English proficiency, students in poverty, and students with disabilities. Funding allocated pursuant to C4E is required to be spent on the following 6 program initiatives shown on this screen. They are additional instructional time on task, for example, before and after school programs and individualized tutoring, model programs for multilingual learners, for example, English language learner innovative programs, full day pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, class size reduction, and teacher and principal quality initiatives, for example, mentoring of new staff, and middle and high school restructuring. Further, we are required by state law to annually develop through a public process a citywide Contracts for Excellence and community school district Contracts for Excellence. The public process is how parents, teachers, and other community members and interested parties provide input about the citywide and community school district C4Es and about the allocation of C4E funding in their schools. Our public process includes this meeting, as well as other meetings that superintendents will be conducting across the city with their respective CECs, and 5 borough hearings that will also be happening during this period of time. Although the C4E process is not new, we have submitted a C4E since school year 2007-2008. Under recent changes to the state law, the timeline for the public process, including the district C4E presentations, has changed. We are now required to start the process no later than 30 days after the enactment of a state budget, and we are also required to provide notice to the public process 15 days prior to the first public hearing. State law requires that community school district contracts for excellence be presented by superintendents at CEC meetings to enable public comment on those C4E plans. To that end, we will be recording all comments made at the end of this meeting. This is an important process which allows families and community members an opportunity to provide input about how their schools are funded and is part of their schools receiving this significant funding. It is an essential element in the C4E plan that the New York City Public Schools submits to the state, which the state must approve in order for New York City Public Schools to receive C4E funding. As stated earlier in the presentation, a portion of the additional funding New York City is receiving will be restricted, and that is due to a change in the law. Any school aid increase above 3%, 6% is subject to be restricted and can only be used in one of the 6 eligible uses discussed in the previous slide. Due to this change, the amount of foundation aid subject to the requirements of C4E increased by $225 million, from $531 million to $756 million. The new law requires that New York City School District create and implement a plan to reduce actual class size over the next 5 years, beginning September 2023. The plan must be signed off by the chancellor and the presidents of the unions representing the teachers and the principals. The class size plan and our class size working group will be discussed in more depth later in the presentation. Now for a breakdown of the C4E funding. Of the $756 million subject to contracts for excellence, $182 million will remain unrestricted. Since 2007-2008, this funding has been used to support fair student funding and will continue in 2023 to 24 school year. Were this funding to be used for another purpose, the DOE would not be able to continue funding all schools at 100% fair student funding. The remaining $574 million, comprised of existing $349 million and an additional $225 million, will be allocated as restricted funding for use by schools within the 6 eligible uses previously discussed. $574 million of restricted aid is broken out by 1, discretionary, and 2, targeted and maintenance of effort. For the discretionary pot, $425 million or 75% of restricted contract for excellence funds are released to the 1,500 plus schools in late spring. This is an increase from $215 million over fiscal year 2023. Principals will work with their school leadership teams to plan and use this funding for school year 2023-24 in alignment with eligible program categories. They may choose to change the use of the funding or to maintain existing staffing positions or programs that were funded in school year 2022-2023. For the targeted and maintenance of effort pot, $145 million or 25% of restricted funds will be targeted for specific programs and will maintain these existing programs. Schools receiving allocation were chosen based on A, overall student need, and B, capacity to carry out the specific program. $84.6 million will go to integrated co-teaching classrooms or ICT. $11.5 million will go to ASD, which is Autism Spectrum Disorder Program classrooms. $9 million to full day pre-K, $5.5 million to PATH, $3.3 million to curriculum support, $0.8 million to iRead, and $30 million to summer programming under maintenance of effort. Let's take a look at the proposed allocation of restricted funds. Citywide discretionary funds where schools decide on use within allowable programs, $425,413,700, whatever that is, 74.84% of the monies goes to that. ICT, integrated co-teaching classes, you have $84,600,062 or 14.74%. ASD, $11,470,636 or 2%. Pre-K, $8,979,572 or 1.56%. PATH, which is targeted and schools must spend on this purpose also, is $5,485,478 at 0.96%. Curriculum support, $3,086,483 at 0.54%. iRead at $775,140 at 0.14%. And summer programming, $30,159,000 at 5.23%. Totaling $573,811,288. Okay, let's take a look at the proposed allocation of restricted funds for this district. So for discretionary, $17,699,184 or 81.34% goes to discretionary funding. $1,805,238 or 8.3% goes to ICT classes. $536,814 or 2.4%, 7% goes to ASD Nest programs. $429,594 or 1.97% goes to pre-K. Curriculum support is $317,072 or 1.46%, and summer programming or summer rising $970,634 or 4.6%, totaling $21,758,536. We will take public feedback into account in the incoming weeks as we continue to work towards complying with this mandate. The deadline for submitting public comment will be August 11th. Please share your comments and feedback by using the C4E email address you see on the screen. And Louis, also please drop the email in the chat. Thank you. Now we are moving to the fourth major topic. We already discussed foundation aids, stimulus, and C4E funding streams. Now we will wrap up by discussing the class size reduction plan and the class size working group. We will share more about the new class size legislation that you may have heard about, as well as the work that New York City Public Schools are doing around public engagement related to the implementation of this law via class size working group. First, I'm going to give a brief overview of the law itself, including the basic requirements and the timeline for compliance. In September 2022, Governor Hochul enacted Chapter 556 of the Laws of 2022, which requires the New York City School District to create a 5-year class size reduction plan for all K-12 community district and high schools. Chapter 556 sets forth requirements that apply only to the New York City School District, including new class size caps for all public K-12 community district and high schools, a class size reduction plan, which must be approved by the Chancellor and respective presidents of the United Federation of Teachers and the Council of School Supervisors and Administrators, the unions representing New York City School District teachers and principals respectively, and submitted as part of the Contracts for Excellence. A prescribed timeline for the public process for development, posting, and submission of the contracts for excellence. Annual implementation reports on the status of the class size reduction plan, and penalties in the form of reduced state funding if adequate progress to reduce class size is not made. The law imposes specific class size caps within the New York City School District for the first time. Prior legislation required a plan to reduce average class sizes and did not set forth specific average class size caps. Class size caps had previously been set subject to collective bargaining agreements between New York City Public Schools and the UFT and could be exceeded in certain circumstances. This new law prescribes specific class size caps of 20 students in grades K to 3, 23 students in grades 4 through 8, and 25 students in grades 9 through 12, and 40 students in physical education and performing groups in all grades. For next school year, 20% of our classrooms citywide must meet the caps that I just noted. Special education classes are not subject to the caps. We are currently assuming that ICT classes are considered general education classes and will need to meet the caps. Chapter 556 allows for 4 types of exemptions to the class size targets: space, over-enrolled students, license area shortages, and severe economic distress. These exemptions must be approved by the chancellor and the respective presidents of the UFT and CSA as part of the class size reduction plan. In the event that the DOE and the unions are unable to reach agreement on the exemptions, the law mandates arbitration. In addition, UFT may negotiate higher class sizes in elective and specialty classes if the majority of school staff approve the increase. We understand that the law presents many implementation challenges. To that end, the chancellor has sought to convene a working group to ensure that perspectives from a wide range of stakeholders inform our strategy for implementation. Additionally, we welcome public comment on the class size reduction plan. The DOE projects that staffing costs alone could be roughly $1.3 billion annually once schools are fully in compliance with the class size mandates. The School Construction Authority estimates that the capital costs of complying with these mandates will cost a total of $30 to $35 billion. Within the $1.3 billion estimate, there is an assumption that schools will need to realign budgets as they work to increase the number of teachers hired. The capital cost estimate includes funding for creating new seats through new buildings or annexes, converting administrative or other non-instructional space to instructional space, and other costs associated with increasing the number of seats. In February 2023, the chancellor announced that New York City Public Schools would be convening a class size working group to gather input related to implementing Chapter 556. In late February, we released the interest survey for participating in this class size working group to allow anyone to express their interest in joining. From those who expressed interest, New York City Public Schools built a working group reflecting diverse perspectives and experiences from across New York City, taking into account individuals' geographic representation, experience as a parent or guardian of a New York City public school student, educator, advocate, researcher, or other stakeholder, while also considering individuals representing different school levels and sizes, as well as organizational affiliations. I'm happy to share that the group is largely comprised of parents and parent leaders, in addition to principals, teachers, and superintendent representatives, and various community stakeholders. The class size working group meeting minutes and materials are posted regularly for public review at the site listed on the slide. We will consider feedback received on our proposed plan during the public process. The deadline for submitting public comment will be August 11th, 2023. For those who wish to provide feedback, may submit their comments by email to classsize@schools.nyc.gov. And Louis, also please drop that in the chat. Thank you. Please note all different public comment emails for each of the presentations that I provided today. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time. I will let you return to your very important end of the year meeting agenda, which I think was this, Joe. But before I do, I want to thank this community for all the hard work and collaboration this school year. I wish you all a good summer and look forward to a successful 2023-2024 school year. And now I will open up the meeting for comments
Thank
or
you,
questions.
Superintendent Domingo. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd ask that you raise your hand. I have a question. So I went last night to a town hall meeting where the mayor and his cabinet, let's call, were present. And there was a specific question regarding funding for the class size reduction. But did I misunderstand? Because I thought the mayor said that there was no funding for that. But now I see under the C4E, there is funding. I'm a little confused. Did the mayor make a misstatement?
Dragomira, do you know, you want to?
I'm not familiar with that town hall. I think, so what this presentation is trying to do is provide an estimate how much it would cost if we actually reduce the class sizes in the current physical rooms, and which would require additional teachers,
no,
right? Because what we're doing, we're doing right now under C4E, a lot of schools aren't able to actually create new classes. So what they're doing is they're reducing the ratios, but to actually have 20 kids in a classroom as opposed to 25, that often requires more physical space, which a lot of schools don't have, and also in addition to additional teachers.
No, I understand. So these are just estimated proposals of what it would cost, but maybe I misunderstood, but I thought the mayor stated that there's no money allocated for that from the state, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that.
So I think, Joe, one of the concerns that the city is having with Albany is that under those 6 areas, class size reduction is one of those areas. But as we showed tonight in our presentation, we use the funding for other areas that are also necessary in our schools, such as, so if you see here, class size reduction is just one of the 6.
I understand.
So where the one side will say it is a funded mandate, we're also saying, but we also need that money for additional instructional time, for model programs for multilingual learners, for full pre-K and kindergarten classes, full day, you know, for teacher and principal quality initiatives. So it's not, we don't necessarily have the amount of funding we would want, we would need in order to fulfill some of the other things if we're only using the monies for class size reduction.
So basically, they didn't allocate what needs to be applied towards specifically, let's say, class size reduction. It's just, it has the C4E.
It has to fall into the one of those 6 places, right?
Okay. So because I think the mayor gave the impression to the community that there's no money for class size reduction, but maybe there are other.
Yeah, and also when C4E first came out, they did not have the specific mandate of the new law that requires specific caps on class sizes.
Okay. All right. I don't want to take up everyone's question. I have another question, but maybe I'll allow someone else to ask a question if they have it, and I'll come back to my other question. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Okay, so my other question is, do you know if funding will be provided for to us, our district, for the bilingual programs?
So that is a question that I am working very closely with the central teams on. And as you know, that we are very proud of our bilingual programs, but we also say all the time that we're also proud of the diversity that exists within District 25. And so we currently have programs in Korean, Spanish, and Mandarin. And we are looking to make sure that District 25 gets the maximum amount that we can in order to continue to support those programs.
I think I understand, but there's no money allocated to that right now, right? We just,
There is, Louis, if you could go back to that slide for District 25. Actually.
It's not one of the, it's not one of
Yeah,
the categories, even for citywide, it's not one of the categories.
Yeah. Yeah, all right, so I will,
can you
as
find
I
out
said,
or
I
make-
just had we just had a conversation about this the other day where I was speaking specifically to our bilingual programs and meeting the needs of our new language learners, and that does include our special education bilingual classes. So we will continue to work to ensure that those programs are maintained. And I will keep you in the loop around feedback from Central about supports in those areas.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? That any other present members here this evening? So I believe we have until, or the public has until August 11th, is it?
So, yes, August 11th is for, there's two different dates, actually.
Oh, yeah,
June
August
30th
11th
is
class
for
size
the
reduction.
stimulus and foundation aid. And August 11th is for contract for excellence and class sizes.
Understood. Are there any other questions or comments from anyone present this evening?
Okay,
Okay, so I think we are done.
yes.
So I thank everyone for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Superintendent. That was a very detailed
Thank you.
Yeah,
presentation.
very detailed. I would drink some water.
Thank you.
And of course, this meeting is recorded, so if anyone has any comments, please make them before the required deadlines. I wish everyone a happy summer. I congratulate this CEC for a wonderful 2 years. It was a pleasure working with you all. Mr. Hunane, I wish you the best in your future as you graduate. Would you like to say anything to anybody who's here?
Yes, first off, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the support I got from every single one of you guys. And of course, we were a team, but we also worked as a family. So throughout the school year, I really enjoyed. Once again, thank you. Really appreciate it.
And we thank you for your input. It was fantastic. You did a great job.
Thank
So
you.
for
And
that.
Mohammed, you said you were going to work to try to get us some more applications for
Yes.
student members. We'd love to have one by July 1st.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I'm already working with a student. So she's
Perfect.
working on her application. So maybe I'll send you an email by next week.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely. And send it
Great.
to CEC too for Carly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
Thank you
believe
so
the
much.
election results will be out this week, if I'm corrected. So I wish everyone luck.
Hopefully.
Yes. And we look forward to hearing about the wonderful things you provide to our district, everybody.
Yep.
And good luck to everyone.
Yep, good luck,
So-
everyone.
Thank you.
that's it,
Bye.
this
Have a
episode
good summer.
of the meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Happy Father's Day to all the dads for this weekend.
Happy
Yes.
Father's
Happy
Day.
Father's
Bye-bye,
Day.
everybody.
Father's Day.
President.
All the best,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.